about the diencephalon. Now, the diencephalon consists of structures that actually surrounds the third ventricle. Now let's draw the structures that surrounds the third ventricle. Now let's assume that you're here and you decide to go upward. Now when you go upward, you pass through a canal, right? And then this canal is actually called the cerebral aqueduct of Sylvius. Now, when you pass through this canal, you will enter a cavity that is actually called the third ventricle. Now, by the sides of the third ventricle, we have two structures that are called the thalami. So we have one here and we have another one here. Now let's assume that you go back posteriorly, you have a structure here. This structure is actually called the pineal body. If you don't call it the pineal body, you call it the pineal gland. Now, still behind the thalamus, we have what we call the habenula nuclei. Habenula nuclei. And then, in front of the thalamus, anterior to the thalamus, or let's say anterior to the third ventricle, we have another structure called the hypothalamus. So the hypothalamus is around here. It surrounds the third ventricle. And of course, the hypothalamus has a swelling that is called the mammillary body. These are mammillary body. And then it also has another swelling called the tuber cinereum. Of course, in the hypothalamus, we have lots of hypothalamic nuclei that gives rise to axons, which actually forms the tuber cinereum. And of course, the tuber cinereum gives rise to the median eminence that eventually forms the pituitary stalk, that eventually forms the pituitary stalk, or what we call the infundibulum. And from there, we have our posterior pituitary gland. And then we also have the anterior pituitary, which is not actually part of the hypothalamus. It is actually an evagination from the nasopharynx or from a pouch, which is called the Radke's pouch. I mentioned that in our last video, Radke's pouch. It is actually an evagination from the nasopharynx. Then also, we also have the optic chiasma as part of the hypothalamus. The optic chiasma, the optic nerve, we also have the optic chiasma and the optic nerve as part of the hypothalamus. The optic chiasma, of course you know that the optic nerve gives rise to the optic chiasma, right? And the optic chiasma eventually gives rise to the optic tract. And the optic tract actually goes down to a portion of the thalamus, which is known as the lateral geniculate body. It is actually a swelling that is found at the lateral surface of the thalamus. We have another one called the medial geniculate body. So, but the optic tract actually goes down to the lateral geniculate body. The same thing happens here. This one comes here to the lateral geniculate body, and of course we still have our medial geniculate body. There is a band of gray matter fiber that actually holds or connects the two thalamus together. We call that band of fiber the interthalamic adhesion. If you don't call it the interthalamic adhesion, you call it the interthalamic connection. And of course, we have the internal medullary lamina here. Then, below the thalamus, we also have a structure which is part of the basal ganglia. That structure is actually called the subthalamus. So, from a diagram, you observe that the diencephalon consists of the thalamus, which usually acts as a relay station, and then, of course, we also have the subthalamus, we have the epithalamus. The epithalamus consists of the pineal body or the pineal gland. The pineal body is responsible for secreting what we call melatonin, and melatonin is actually implicated in circadian rhythm. We also have, as part of the epithalamus, we also have the habenula nuclei, and then we have, I forgot to mention, the habenula commission. Is a connection between the habenula nuclei. That there is a connection between the habenula nuclei. That connection is known as the habenula commission. So, our epithalamus consists of the pineal body, the habenula nuclei, and the habenula commission. Then, we also have, you remember that in the thalamus, there are two swellings at the lateral surface of the thalamus. One is known as the lateral geniculate body, and the other one is known as the medial geniculate body. These two structures are actually called the metathalamus. And then, finally, we have the hypothalamus. So, usually, we normally have 5 structures that make up the diencephalon. The thalamus, the subthalamus, the epithalamus, that consists of the pineal body, the habenula nuclei, the habenula commission, and then we have the thalamus and the hypothalamus. And also don't forget that the third ventricle is also found around the diencephalon. Thank you for listening. I hope to see you in our next class.